Shemai Brindia, and welcome back to my channel. My name is CaitlinAnwyn for anyone who's new here, and let's get back into building in Planet Zoo. And we're continuing with the Balayong Zoo, and today I'm going to be doing another base game Asian animal, not one from the Southeast Asia Animal Pack, but this one fits in very nicely with the Asian animals. All these animals in the zoo are going to be from the Asia continent. This is going to be the Chinese Pangolin. The Chinese Pangolin actually goes really nicely with the Komodo dragon as well that I built in the last episode on Wednesday, because the pangolin's got like these really cool scales. And from my research, as I always have a look at what kind of habitats these animals like to live in before I build something for them, I want to make sure that they are happy in these little habitats that I've built. And I found that pangolins actually live in burrows, and I was trying to figure out a way to build them a burrow underground but still allow my guests to see the pangolins scuttling around under the burrow. So I pulled up the barriers that were already there to get like a general height for things, and I raised up the terrain to be able to dig into it basically and create these burrows, and that'll still allow the guests to see into the burrows without lowering the pathways, because I've been enjoying having the elevated pathways. I'm not sure how much I'm gonna have to edit out because the camera did not like being underground like this in these burrows, and digging around I kept like popping out of the burrow and above the terrain again. And I remember having this problem when I was building underwater as well, and I thought it was just because I was kind of glitching the terrain so much with the water, but no, it's just I think the Planet Zoo camera is a little bit fussy and it doesn't like being underground and in tight enclosed spaces. It's a little claustrophobic. And I cut through the terrain a little bit and made two little peepholes for the guests to see the pangolin as well. It was lucky I did have these little peepholes because it was kind of easier to find where I was with being able to see the outside world, because once I started digging and trying to make the little tunnels for them to burrow in and hide from the guests, I ended up just really getting lost and just digging really odd shaped holes. So it was a little bit of trial and error, as it always is with terrain manipulation. I haven't quite mastered that yet. But this was just like a whim. I was talking through things with my mum while I was like researching the different species. I wasn't really sure what to build for this episode, like which habitat to do. And I found that the pangolins like burrow in, and my mum actually suggested to do like peepholes so guests could actually see in the burrows. I always forget that I need to make sure my guests are happy and they can see the animals. I don't really care about them. And of course, underground, nothing's going to be green and grassy. That's not going to grow properly. So I had to paint all of the terrain on the inside a nice dark soil color, like it is definitely dug into the dirt. This is one of my more natural looking habitats. I don't think anything looks like real life zoo things, but at least it's kind of something that you would see a Chinese pangolin live in. I think they'll be happy in their little burrows. And I used a panel of the one-way glass. Why do I always get this wrong? You know what I mean, the one that's black on one side and see-through on the other, to block off those little peepholes. I thought it looked a little bit dangerous. I know the animals technically won't fall out of it, but I thought may as well put those glass panels in so it doesn't look like the pangolins can fall out of their burrows. Even in the day, these burrows are quite dark, so I used the spotlights, whatever they're called, to light up the inside of the burrow. I didn't want it super bright like it was industrial and all lit up, but these spotlights, and if you like angle them slightly, they disperse a lot more, so the lighting really works in this case, so guests can see in their little peepholes and they can get into the burrow first time. I normally don't get that lucky when it comes to manipulating terrain. I usually get a little bit more jankier than that on the first try, but it actually worked. It's like, oh thank god, I do not want to dig those tunnels again. It was so fiddly. I actually had a day in between building the last part, like the start of it, and this part, and I had to think and I had a chat with my mum, because we always like bounce off ideas off each other with my builds. So I thought the barrier just didn't look very nice around the hill with the, I don't know, cork. It looks like cork maybe. Whatever the barrier is. I didn't like it, so I lowered it and kept them just about in level with the pathway so guests can see over the little railing and into the peepholes. I could add in cherry blossoms, which was just amazing. I you know, I love being able to add in the cherry blossoms into the habitats as well as around the zoo, so it just all ties it in nicely together. And I thought the terrain was just a little bit too plain by here, so I added in the rocks as a little bit more of a texture to the side and a little bit more realism. Like, rocks don't look that smooth. Even if I use the roughen terrain tool, the rocks don't seem to look like that in real life, like the terrain. So I just added lots of different rocks as like a feature in the middle. I added in like patches of plant life in certain parts that look like they could be flat enough to have the flowers grow on them. So there was like a little flat dent by here in the hill, and I just grabbed some what looked like wild flowers, like weed looking things. They do have nettles in this, so they are technically weeds. I wanted it to look like a little wildflower meadow, so I got mostly green plants dotted here, there and everywhere in more of like a random pattern, so it looks more natural and like it's grown in the wild. And it stops the ground looking so brown and like grey brown everywhere, because the ground is mostly like soil and rock, and adding these little wildflower meadows around the cherry blossom trees kind of brings in a little bit of greenery. And like I did for the Komodo dragon's rock igloo, as I called it, volcanic rock igloo, I wanted to add in the little plants that were growing in the meadows, popping out of the rocks too, because like moss and plants that don't need so much water can grow out of like cracks in rocks and stuff. I think somewhere in the recesses of my mind from A-level biology I remember something like that. I think that made it look a lot more interesting as well than just some bumps of rocks. There's two different ways of viewing this habitat, so I had to think of both. So the lower part is interesting because the guests can see inside the burrow and inside the hill, and then the upper viewing area is interesting because then you see above the hill and you see all the plants and the pangolin climbing up, and I've put their like food area on the top of the hill as well. And I just wanted to make these viewing areas look a little bit more interesting as well. The ivy over the glass looks really nice, but adding in a few extra little rocks around the opening adds that extra little detail in. Most of the rocks that we are given in this game are just too big. There's a very little selection of smaller rocks, but luckily because we've got like 360 rotation, they do end up looking a little bit different. And then for the opening of the burrow to let the pangolin in, I lined that with rocks as well, just to make it look a little bit more reinforced and more man-made, even though the pangolin in my head had dug this burrow, the entrance has been like reinforced by the zookeepers. And like the Komodo dragon, I want to add in a little fun fact about the pangolin, because we haven't really looked into these as well, because this is a base game animal. So I've just picked one at random that's a bit of fun from the Zoopedia. And I thought this one was super interesting. Pangolin do not have teeth. They swallow small stones, so adding in all the stones around this habitat totally fits in with this. And the small stones remain in their stomachs to help grind up the food they eat. I'm glad I added quite a lot of rocks into this habitat now because it fits in so well. So yeah, they got like really long tongues, which I will be showing you right at the end of the speed builds. I'll be going around and having a look at how the pangolins move around, but they have really long tongues but no teeth. They swallow stones to grind up their food. Interesting, right? Did you know that? Because I certainly did not, and I was very surprised to read that one. So yeah, that's our fun fact of the speed build for the Chinese pangolins. And I wanted to add bedding into this burrow as well, so this could be counted as like a nice little bed for them. So they like go and rest by the peepholes so the guests can see them sleeping as well. But it flattens the terrain and that's so irritating. I wish I could switch that off, but I couldn't figure it out. And more rocks, which after going through the fun facts, super happy I added more rocks in. I just wanted to add them in like the pangolin couldn't dig through certain parts and the rocks are kind of poked through, and like that bit was difficult to dig. I don't really like how the terrain looks on its own. I like adding in a few rocks here and there. And it does have like more of an excuse of why they haven't dug around certain areas. I had a plant poking through from the meadow above, so I just added some rocks in to hide that plant floating as well. And I also added some rocks in on the ceiling of the burrow as well to hide the lights too. And I said this in the last one, I've been so spoiled by having all of the Southeast Asia Animal Pack animals having signs. And I thought there wasn't a pangolin sign, but there is one in the East Asia style. It's a little different to the other signs because it's kind of like on this scroll. But I thought it was really pretty illustration. I just thought it was gorgeous showing those scales. The pangolin is actually the only mammal with scales. I'll do a little bonus fun fact for you. So I just used an extra little panel and recolored that the same as the education frame that I'd made. So it looks like it's kind of just sticking out of the side and held up by the little panel there. And this is what I meant by the above viewing area. The higher up pathway, and that is the Malayan tapir habitat, what we are near there. But I still wanted to add in some extra education boards by there as well, because people will be looking down into the pangolins as well as looking into the Malayan tapirs. And all my previous builds, or some of my most recent previous builds, will be up in the iCards. I'll put like the last 5, something like that. So if you are interested in any more speed builds, check those out in the iCards. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I won't bore you with too much of the education. I just thought the Southeast Asia sign for the pangolin was really pretty. And yeah, so there's a little pangolin having a little explore. They didn't really want to be in the burrows when I wanted to do this little pretties at the end, so they walk really fast out of there, but it's as much as I could do. I didn't want to sit around and wait for them to go in themselves. I just moved them in there, and because they didn't want to be in there, they escaped quite quickly. Let me know what you think of this Chinese pangolin burrow. I think that's what I'm going to call it. I never really know. I record all this and then after I edit I decide what I'm going to call it. And next week I think I'm going to go back to a Southeast Asia animal from like the pack. Maybe the proboscis monkey. But Let me know what animal you would like to see after that. We've still got lots of different animals to do. Plenty of space in the zoo. We've still got the clouded leopard, the sunbear and the proboscis to do from the pack, and I've also got a plan for Indian peafowl and red pandas. That's a new one. So let me know what you would like to see. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, and if you haven't already and you would like to, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. I upload on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!